Hi guys, it's Diane here and welcome back to the Citrus Twist YouTube channel. Today I am going to create a really pretty simple spread in my Life Crafted album using some of the new bits and pieces that are available right now in the Citrus Twist store. Now I am starting with a couple of base pages that I have cut from smooth white cardstock. They are 5 inches by 8¼ inches. And I've pre-punched those with my 6-hole punch, so they are all ready to go into my album. Now I started this page by kind of playing around with some of the floral die cuts. I picked out all of the pink ones and just see how they work with my photo, but in the end I decided they kind of competed a little bit too much. It's a very simple photo I've got. This is my one and only peony of the season. I ended up having to shuffle around and transplant some of my peonies this winter, and so I only managed one little flower. So definitely needed to take a photo of it. And what I'm going to do is I went through the 6x8 Sweet Story paper pad and I found this partially used scrap of paper. It's almost the exact same color as my peony, so I used a couple of different flower punches. They're the same shaped flower but different sizes, and I punched out a whole bunch of those, and I figured what I'm going to do is recreate these on the left side of my spread to create my own pattern paper. Now I don't really know how many I'm going to need, so I just go a little bit punch crazy until I've got a pile of pretty flowers. Now it's at this point that I decide I'm going to change tacks and remove the actual florals from that floral die cut pack. I am going to use these little black leaves though. I like the contrast between the sort of pink graphic-y flowers and these sort of, they're almost scribbly looking leaves, so I really like those. They do also match the kind of foliage in that photo as well, so I'm going to use those. Now I'm at the moment just kind of getting a basic idea of what I might want to do, and you can see this as well. I'm just creating this random floral pattern on the left side of the page using some of those punch outs, and I'm being careful to pick out the ones that don't have that lighter pink polka dot on them. So there are a couple that had that, and I have added one over on the right hand side too, just to kind of tie those two sides together. Now I'm also thinking what I want to do is I'm going to try and find a way to split these black florals as well, so that I can again tie the two sides together. I really want to get some of that onto the right hand side. Now I was going to stick down my photo, and then I decided I wanted to add just a little bit more detail to the right hand side, so I grabbed another punch. This time it's a border punch, kind of a lacy doily kind of look to it, and I'm just going to punch out a little bit of that right hand side of the right hand page, not all of it, just a little chunk, and I'm going to back that with the remaining piece of that pink polka dot paper. So to do that, I'm just going to trim down one edge until it's straight so that I can line that up with the edge of the cardstock. I've still got the punched edge in there, and it's just a little bit sort of bulky and hard to work with, so I'm going to trim that off with some scissors. And then to attach this pattern paper behind my cardstock, I'm just going to use my sewing machine. Just line it up along the right edge and then run a line of stitching down there, and it adds a really beautiful texture. It's just a very subtle detail, but I did stitch in pink thread just to kind of keep that monochromatic look. Now once I've got that piece stitched in, I can go ahead and use my scissors to just trim off any excess, and I'll use that in just 1 second. And now I can go ahead and I've got a place to adhere my photo down, so I'm just going to use a little bit of tape runner and just adhere that alongside of my punched piece. Now I'm going to create my title on top of my photo, and I'm going to use both the Chloe regular alphabet and these bright pink puffy sticker alphas. They're my favorite, you can see that. And again, pink, keeping everything really monochromatic. It matches my flower, it's so pretty. And I'm going to stack this title, so I am adding the word season with the puffy stickers, and then I'm going to use the uppercase alpha to add the word peony on top of season. So my title is going to read Peony Season. Now this is the first time that I've used this alpha set, so I am grabbing a little bit of scrap paper and I'm just going to stamp each alpha a couple of times onto the scrap paper before I go ahead and stamp directly onto my cardstock. It's just to make sure that those stamps are primed before I go ahead and stamp my final title, just to make sure I get a really clean, solid stamp. You can also use a sand eraser or rub the stamps over the palm of your hand, anything just to get rid of that kind of slickness to them. It really will help the solidness of the stamping. So I am stamping in black ink. Again, I want to tie in those little black florals. So all of the stamping that I do today, I'm just going to do in black. And then I've got this really crisp, clean color scheme, the monochromatic pink with just those few touches of black. Now, speaking of a few touches of black, I am going to add a little bit of stamping underneath the photo. So I'm picking out a few phrases from the currently stamped set. This is one of my favorite releases this month. There's so many sentiments on here that you can use. I've picked 3. I'm going to stack them up and just stagger them down the bottom. So it says, "Remember now," and "You have my heart." I'm going to leave that stamp set there for a minute because I do want to add some to the left-hand side of the spread as well. But for now, I'm going to just work on finishing off this right-hand spread by adding one of these black floral elements onto the right-hand side. And I've decided I'm just going to trim off a little piece. I don't need the whole of it. And I'm going to tuck it in underneath my photo. So I'm adding a little bit of liquid adhesive and I'm going to use my tweezers here just to slip that underneath the photo and tuck it in between the stamping. So it creates its own little cluster down there with the stamps. Now it's at this point I decided what I want to do is break up some of that pink a little bit because the punched flowers that I've added are all from one pattern. It's a little bit kind of static, a little bit boring looking. So I decided that I would re-punch a few different florals and I'm going to use this swan paper. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to carefully punch out this time. And I'm punching so that each of the flowers has a little bit of white, a little bit of the black outline of the swan, and some of that pretty lighter pink background. The only thing I'm doing is being careful not to punch out the swan's head because I don't necessarily want it to be recognizable as a swan. I just want that lovely texture from the drawn elements in that paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and replace a few of these darker purple flowers with some of these kind of textural lighter pink ones. And it just adds a lovely kind of texture to it and breaks up some of that heavy pink. So now that I've got the placement of the floral punches where I like them, and you're going to laugh in just one second, trust me, I've spent a lot of time getting these where I want them. I am going to add a couple more of those sentiment stamps from that currently stamped set up the top left-hand corner of this page where I've got my other black floral sitting. So I'm adding a little stamp that says "Here and Now" and one that says "The Best." So again, it's tying in the black into this side. Now I go to adhere down this other little black and white floral and I decide I want to add a little bit more texture. So here's where you're going to laugh. I just pull all of these flowers back straight off the page. I was wondering how I could remember where they were. And in the end, I just pulled them off. So I'm using that same border punch, this whole same technique. I just punched the corner of this top page and I'm going to add that same little piece of pattern paper in behind there with some of that pink stitching from my sewing machine. Just again to tie those 2 pages in, but to create a little bit more of a sort of statement cluster up the top here. So I've got the floral, I've got the stamps, and I've got that stitching and the texture with the border punch and the little bit of color from the pattern paper. And then I can go ahead and rebuild this floral pattern back onto my left-hand side spread. I decide this time though, I'm just gonna eyeball it as I go. So I'm adding adhesive with the little flowers and then I start placing them on and gluing them down. Now, as I'm gluing all of these little flowers down, I realize I want to add just a couple more over onto the right-hand side. I have added one at the top. I haven't actually glued it down yet. I have just placed it there, one of the lighter pink and white florals. And I decide to balance out the 2 pages and just to draw the eye over onto the right-hand side, I'm going to add a couple more over there as well. So I'm going to add one of the darker pink florals and then a second lighter pink one down at the bottom underneath my sentiment stamp.